And once again, we are here on Living in the 21st Century. Joining me this evening in the studio is John Kelly. He is the director for Second Thoughts. Also joining me in the studio is Rhoda Gibson. She is the co founder of MassAdapt. Lady and gentlemen, welcome once again to Living in
Thank
the
you very
21st
much,
Century.
Errol.
Thank you, Nero.
John, tell me a little bit about yourself and what your organization is all about.
Sure, I'm a disability rights activist in Boston, and I'm also a writer. And right now, I am the New England Regional Director for Not Dead Yet. Not Dead Yet is a grassroots national organization of disabled people opposed to legalized assisted suicide and the mindset that it's better to be dead than disabled. I'm also director of the Massachusetts state affiliate, Second Thoughts Massachusetts, Disability Rights Advocates Against Assisted Suicide. And we chose our name Second Thoughts because we have found that the more people learn about the realities of assisted suicide, the more likely they are to oppose it.
Beautiful. Okay, and Rhoda, you're the co-founder of MassAdapt. Could you just tell me a little bit more about it?
Yes, MassAdapt is the national, we're part, the Massachusetts chapter of the national chapter organization, ADAPT. And ADAPT is a grassroots organization that fights for the rights of the disabled through getting legislation in and adding to the ADA. A lot of the founding members of ADAPT have were the key people that wrote the ADA, the American Disabilities Act. And I myself, in 2011, I found myself with an infection down my spine, which left me in an incomplete paraplegic. And in 2012, towards the end of 2012, I joined Boston Center for Independent Living, and they, in 2013, took us to DC for our first ADAPT action, and myself and two other females, Allegra Stout and Olivia Richard, we decided to start a chapter here in Massachusetts at that time.
Okay, beautiful. Well, John, we have a lot here to cover when it comes to health care. We have the Trump care. We have assisted suicide to speak about. Could you really enlighten us as to what's really going on now in this time when it comes to disabilities and how they are treated in our society, whether it's through governmental structuring in terms of bills going through the Senate, etc. Could you really enlighten us and educate us?
Sure. Well, there are a range of threats to disabled people right now. First, I'll discuss legalized assisted suicide, which has been getting a lot of publicity, and the proponents are very well funded, and they've been pushing it in many states. And in Massachusetts, I think this is the 8th time in the last, since late 90s, that a bill will be in the legislature. And what these bills do is basically put everyone at risk because it's based on shoddy science and wishful thinking. So, for example, these bills pretend that doctors can actually predict when someone will die. Assisted suicide is available to people who supposedly have a lifespan of 6 months or left to live, but it turns out that millions of people are misdiagnosed every year, and 15% at least of people diagnosed as terminally ill will outlive their diagnosis. So this puts everyone at risk. So we have the example of Ted Kennedy, who was given 2 to 4 months to live, but lived 15 more months that were very meaningful for him and his family. We have a member in Western Massachusetts, John Norton, who, when he was 20, was diagnosed with ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, and he knows he would have taken assisted suicide were it available. But it wasn't. His disease process stopped, and 60 years later, he's urging people not to go down this road. Um, Basically, if assisted suicide is legalized, some people will lose their lives through mistakes, abuse, insurers' bottom line, and suicidal despair. And there are no safeguards ever devised or even proposed that could deal with this. So, with insurance, we have a situation with Trump Care coming in now where millions of people are at risk for not having any insurance. But even in the present system, if you have a serious illness and your doctor recommends a course of treatment, it's up to your insurance company to decide whether they will fund it or not. So we can't really speak of choice when the insurance company says, no, we won't cover your treatment, but we will cover your assisted suicide. So for example, in California, a young mother named Stephanie Packer, just after assisted suicide was legalized in California, she received a letter from her insurer saying that it would not cover her treatment, but that they told her that her cost for assisted suicide would be $1.20. So we see this constant push going on to get people to not get treatment. There was even an article in the Globe a couple weeks ago saying that dialysis should be rethought and perhaps people should not take it. You know, it came up with these fanciful stories like it doesn't work anyway, people regret being on dialysis, and these things are not true. So we have to fight back because there's this constant message that, you know, that it would be better to be dead than like us. And we say that everyone should receive suicide prevention services. The 18-year-old who just broke up with their partner and the 80-year-old who may have a serious illness. Assisted suicide is a state-run suicide program that will inevitably cost people their lives and steer people away from treatment towards death.
Okay. Let me ask you a question, because I'm a little bit baffled. I'm puzzled with the notion that they want to repeal and replace Obamacare, and we're hearing now that they want to maintain or keep the pre-existing condition as the way it used to be before. But is there some hidden agenda that the naturalists can't see, that even though it says it that way, that eventually when you thought that you are really covered because of your pre-existing condition, that you are not actually covered?
Well, that's a great question because I think there's a lot of confusion out there because some Republicans have talked about keeping coverage for people with pre-existing conditions. But the bill passed by the House strips that away. And so 130 million people who have pre-existing conditions will be at risk for exorbitantly high insurance costs. And, you know, about this bill that just passed, the Republicans are coming out and saying that people who have pre-existing conditions should contribute more to the insurance pool, thereby reducing the cost of those people who lead good lives. They're healthy. They've done the things to keep their bodies healthy. That's a quote from Representative Mo Brooks of Alabama. So we're getting this blaming and shaming poor people and ill people. And there is right now a powerful Twitter campaign going on that people should check out that is hashtag I am a pre-existing condition.
Well, yes, because I mean it sounds very paradoxical. Because if in one breath you are going to say that people who are disabled with pre-existing conditions, that they should pay more money when very well they are not have the ability to work and make and earn a standard or normal income like the able-bodied can. It's like telling the people you are now getting a death sentence. Because if you can't afford it, it simply means you're going to be rejected by the insurance company.
Yes.
So that's like a death sentence as far as I'm concerned. You know, that is serious.
Well, that's why they're putting this, moral language on it. The bill cuts $880 billion from Medicaid, gives nearly $1 trillion in tax cuts to wealthy people, cuts services for disabled kids, increases insurance rates for seniors, and 24 million Americans will lose all insurance. And this is stealing from the poor, pushing vulnerable people towards death, and enriching the rich. And we are saying no, we cannot have this happen.
Absolutely not. So, Rhoda, tell me a little bit more about your organization and what is it presently contributing to Massachusetts, since you are the co-founder of...
Well, we're not only working within Massachusetts, but we are all the national organization. We're doing everything nationally throughout all the states. One of the key things that we're working on is, we focus on three major things: healthcare, housing, and transportation. And then the other issues that come about in all the different states that are particular to each particular state. Right now, we have been focusing heavily on the healthcare issue with the Trump Care. And on March 22nd of this year, 54 members from across the country of ADAPT went to D.C., and we call ourselves DC 54. And our good friend, Senator Schumer, bought 54 tickets for us to tour the Capitol. So we took a nice little tour, and halfway through, we decided to shut down the Capitol Rotunda and started shouting, hey, hey, ho, ho, our Medicaid matters. Don't take our Medicaid away. It was a whole theme through. And that was the day the first day they tried to vote on it, and they got no votes in the Senate. These are the type of actions that ADAPT does. We are a nonviolent, direct action organization. And we actually follow the doctrines of what Martin Luther King did during the Civil Rights movement. We have a plan. We sit down and we try to meet with the officials, whoever, the legislators and Congress, the president, whomever. And when they, after a year, even sometimes 2 years, when they refuse to meet with us, that's when we do a direct nonviolent action. As a matter of fact, from the 15th to the 17th, we're going to be in D.C. again. And we are hoping that we can meet with some of the senators as they rewrite the Trump Care, and hopefully with some of the Democratic senators get in some of the wording from the Affordable Care Act. I do want to mention that the Affordable Care Act had a lot of components in it that really protected and helped the disability community. A lot of people don't know that within that, the Affordable Care Act, President Obama had mandated that for diagnostic equipment, especially for women who need more diagnostic equipment, so more so sometimes than men, but for the mammogram, if you are a complete quad or you're a paraplegic and you can't stand up, a lot of states don't have the equipment that will allow you to be examined. So you could have stage 4 cancer and don't know it until you're about dead, and then you will die from it. Another thing that ADAPT does, Massachusetts ADAPT, as well as all of the ADAPTs, is that we are getting people out of the nursing homes and transitioning them from nursing home to the community and providing them the services and supports that they need to live. Now, instead of the nursing homes charging 100,000 plus per person per year in a nursing home, it would only cost approximately 25,000 a year to keep that person living in an affordable, accessible, integrated community. And that is one of the main things that we're striving for.
Okay, great, excellent. So John, the other question I want to ask you, because the more you think about it, since this whole concept of repealing and replacing Obamacare, it doesn't only threaten the disabled, but those who, this fight is much bigger than all of us, than just one group. How are we going to encourage even the able-bodied to recognize that you may have a pre-existing condition in some different form that could be life-threatening? How could we actually force the government hand to see things from a different standpoint, rather than modifying this plan, making it seems good in one way, but in the next way it is so destructive? Is there any strategic plans you have immediately to execute that can actually curb this kind of activity from going on?
Well, I think Rhoda was just describing ADAPT's approach, which is disabled people, people with pre-existing conditions. We have to get out there and make our voice heard, because when people swarm town halls, when we jam up the usual way of doing things, they will respond. When we bombard legislative offices with phone calls such that they can't do anything else that day, it really makes a difference. They are banking on people believing that there's nothing they can do. But we have the power to stop them in their tracks and to restore justice. What is going on now across government is an attempt to roll back the gains that we've made over the last 30 years. So Trump Care, with all these cuts, and it would hurt our abilities to live independently, to be able to work. There's another initiative from the government that was folded into the 21st Century Cures Act, which is these bills that basically attack people with lived experience of mental health diagnoses. Another group I'm a member of, Empower, we are struggling mightily against this so-called assisted outpatient treatment, which is really forced drugging of people in order to stay in the community. So for example, if you are someone with a mental health diagnosis who is in court and facing jail time, they could give you the quote-unquote choice of accepting being drugged in order to stay in the community. And this is an outrageous violation of people's human rights, civil rights, and also they're promoting Medicaid dollars to fund psychiatric beds in hospitals. And so we see the corporations, the pharmaceutical companies are trying to enrich themselves at the expense of our lives and our liberty. So, and then with people in Massachusetts who use personal care attendants. So I, for example, use helpers throughout the day to get up in my wheelchair, eat, take care of all my personal care. they want to institute something called electronic visit verification, whereby my helper would have to call in from my home to document that they are at my house working. And what this would do is put us all on house arrest. So, I mean, I came here with my helper so that I would be safe and be able to be, positioned, and that would be impossible under this system. They want to put us under surveillance, control us, reduce the amount of money allocated for our lives, and when they talk about there's not enough money, we know that's a lie.
Yes.
There are hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars going to the military and that are being used to subsidize corporations. And we deserve it. We deserve single-payer health care, and we deserve empowerment for everyone so that we don't have this very, very rich and most of everyone else being poor.
Okay. You want to say something?
Oh, yes.
It's okay.
Sorry. And some of the things that John was just speaking of, the EVV, the electronic verification, that right now, that was towards the end of the Obama administration, and I think that is somewhat, it was part of the Affordable Care Act.
Okay.
Something they were putting in. So some things right now are up in the air depending on what the present administration is
Okay.
planning to do. One of the things about ADAPT that I love so much is that it encompasses every single disability. So we are also looking at the behavioral, mental health issues, and trying to make sure that all of those are, you're not judged by your mental health. If you go in, if you need if you have a gallbladder issue, that your gallbladder issue is being taken care of, there's not being focus put on your mental health. One of the things that ADAPT has done and is working with Senator Schumer in the Senate and Congressman Sessom, I'll get the name for you shortly, in the House, is the Disability Integration Act. And the Disability Integration Act will encompass a lot of issues that are dealing with people with disabilities and their medical care. And if we had it already passed through the Senate last year, and we were working on the House, and then after this recent election, we had to rewrite it. So we now are re-getting the sponsors and re-getting co-sponsors.
Okay.
And hopefully, if we can get it passed, which we're going to be working on next week,
Okay.
it would be Title, at the end, it would be Title VI to the ADA.
Okay.
And that particular Disability Integration Act is not only going to help persons with disabilities, but anyone, let me back up for just one moment. I want it to be very clear that no one knows what's going to happen to them.
Okay.
And everyone that has a disability, we're all in a club that we did not sign up for. We didn't ask to be disabled.
Okay.
Something has happened to us,
Yes.
and we're disabled. So you don't know what's going to happen to you tomorrow, because it could
Exactly.
only take 5 minutes to
Okay.
get disabled.
Okay.
So if everyone could look at that and see that these are things that we're trying to do, is to save not only ourselves, but what happens to you in the future.
Okay.
So
Gotcha. So John, if there's one thing you would like to say now, it looked like these people are going to fight their best. The president's going to have his hand, whoever he can influence in the Senate, to make this bill pass. I would hope it turns out like back in 2007 when they tried to pass immigration reform. when it just get crashed at the Senate floor. I believe personally it's not going to pass. The Senate is going to be a long, drawn-out fight, and they will lose. That's my prediction, because I don't see anything suitable enough at this point to really replace and do a job like what the present healthcare system is doing at this point. But we are in the final few minutes. I want to give you the last minute, and rather 1 minute to sums up what you think and what you would like to see happen.
Well, we have to see what's going on here, which is the wealthy, the corporations like the pharmaceutical companies, they are promoting a system where there's scapegoating of poorer people, of people with disabilities, and trying to distract people from what's going on. What we need to do is create solidarity across people, across classes, across people of different races, different genders, and demand that everyone be treated with respect. That means old, young, disabled, not, and not to be promoting these outrageous policies which try to push people towards a constricted life or a shortened life.
Beautiful. And in a few seconds, quickly, Rhoda, would you?
I agree with John. I think that well, you've noticed that the people are really outraged with their congressmen so far from last week's vote, and as the people are going to rise up, and I think that they should continue to rise up and join us, and so that we can all work together to fight against the wrongs that this administration wants to do on the American people.
Excellent. With that being said, I want to thank John Kelly, Director, for Second Thoughts, and also Rhoda Gibson, for co-founder of Mass Adapt. I thank you both for joining me here today on Living in the 21st Century, educating the American people as to what's really going on. And to all those out there, I want to say thank you once more for joining in on Living in the 21st Century. Have a nice day.
This is the story of a boy who didn't talk for a long time. The boy liked things to always be the same. Any changes would scare and upset him. The unknown was an unfriendly place. The boy was very sensitive to lights and sounds. So he built secret hiding places where they couldn't get in. The boy didn't like looking people in the eye. He wasn't trying to be mean, it just made him feel uncomfortable. Sometimes he would flap his arms again and again.
One day, I found out I have something called autism. My family got me help. Slowly, I found my voice and learned all the ways I could live with it better.
Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org.